I want you to understand something before I begin. I am not a woman who enjoys conflict. I never have been. I was raised to keep the peace, to set the table, to make sure everyone had enough to eat before I sat down myself. That is who I am. That is who I have always been. But I want you to understand something else, too. There is a difference between being quiet and being blind. And the day my son looked me in the eye and told me to mind my own business, in my own kitchen, at my own table, in the house I had lived in for 31 years, was the day I decided that quiet and blind were two very different things. I chose quiet. I am not sorry for what happened next. My name is Alina Me Whitfield. I am 67 years old. I was born in Savannah, Georgia, in the spring of 1957, the second daughter of a schoolteacher father and a woman who made the best sweet tea in 3 counties and never once let anyone leave her table hungry. My daddy used to say that a quiet woman sees everything. He said it the way men of his generation said things, half compliment, half warning. I took it as both. I learned early that people talk more freely around a woman who doesn't interrupt. They say things they mean. They say things they don't mean. They say things they would never say if they thought someone was really listening. I have always been really listening. I spent 33 years as a legal secretary. Not a paralegal, not an attorney, a legal secretary. I know what that sounds like to some people. I know the way certain folks smile when you say it, the way they nod and move on to something more impressive. But I will tell you what 33 years of legal work taught me. It taught me how to read documents. It taught me how to notice what is missing from a document just as much as what is there. It taught me how to keep records. It taught me how to be patient, how to wait, how to watch a case build itself the way a storm builds. Slowly, quietly, until it is impossible to ignore. I was married for 29 years to a man named Robert Whitfield. Bobby, everyone called him. He was a good man, not a perfect man, but a good one. He worked at the power company for 31 years. He coached Little League on Saturdays even when his knees ached. He made me laugh at least once every single day, even the hard ones. He died of a heart attack in March of 2018, sitting in his recliner, watching the evening news. He was 63 years old. I have not fully recovered from that. I do not expect to. We had 2 children. Our daughter, Patricia, we call her Patty, lives in Charlotte with her husband and their twin boys. She calls me every Sunday evening without fail. She is the kind of person who sends a card for no reason, who remembers the names of your friends, who shows up with food when things go wrong. She is her father's daughter. Then there is my son, Marcus, 41 years old. And this is his story as much as it is mine. I want to be fair about that. I want you to understand that I love my son. I have always loved my son. But love does not make a person blind, and it does not make a person a fool, and it does not make a person willing to sit quietly while something wrong is being done to the people they love. Marcus married a woman named Diane 11 years ago. She was pleasant enough at the beginning. She had her ways. Everyone has their ways. I noticed early that she did not like to be questioned. I noticed that she spoke over other people at dinner, that she made decisions for Marcus the way you'd make decisions for a child, that she had an answer for everything and never once considered that the answer might be wrong. But I kept the peace. I set the table. I made sure everyone had enough to eat. They had 1 child together, my grandson Cooper. He is 9 years old. He has Bobby's eyes. He is the light in the center of all of this darkness, and I want you to hold on to that as this story goes on. Bobby and I built our life in this house. It is a brick ranch on a quiet street just outside of Augusta. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a back porch that faces a yard full of oak trees that Bobby planted the year we moved in. Those trees are enormous now. They shade the whole back of the property. In the summer, you can sit on that porch in the heat of a Georgia afternoon and feel like you are in another world. When Bobby died, the house became mine completely. He had made sure of that. He was a careful man, Bobby was. He had a will. He had everything documented. The house was mine. The small savings account was mine. The life insurance policy was mine. He did not leave me rich, but he left me secure, and he left me a home, and that is more than a lot of women my age can say. Marcus had helped his father with some projects around the house over the years, repairs mostly, plumbing, a new roof 5 years back. He was good with his hands, my son. I always appreciated that. After Bobby died, Marcus began calm. Ing around more frequently. He helped me with things I could not manage alone, moving furniture, cleaning gutters, checking on the car. I was grateful. I told him I was grateful. I believed at the time that this was love, that this was a son taking care of his mother. I was not wrong about the love, but I was wrong about what was underneath it. It started small, the way these things always do. Small comments about the house, about the upkeep, about how much it costs to maintain a property like this on a fixed income. Marcus would walk through the rooms with a kind of assessing quality to his eyes, the way you look at something you are thinking about buying. I noticed. I filed it away. Then Diane started coming around more often. She would walk through my kitchen with that particular energy she had, bright, loud, full of suggestions. She wanted to repaint the hallway. She thought the back bedroom needed new flooring. She mentioned, more than once, that the house was too much for one person. Too much, those were her words. Too much for one person. I smiled. I offered her coffee. I kept the peace. It was a Tuesday in October, 2 years ago now. Marcus and Diane had come over for dinner. Patty was visiting from Charlotte with the boys, which was a joy. The house was full and loud in the good way, the way it used to be when Bobby was alive and we'd have the whole family together at Thanksgiving. After dinner, the grandchildren were in the back room watching television. Patty and I were in the kitchen washing up. Marcus and Diane were on the back porch. I do not think they realized how clearly voices carry through the kitchen window. The screen does nothing to muffle sound. Bobby used to say we needed to replace it. I was glad that night that we never had. It makes more sense financially, Diane was saying. The market is strong right now. If she sold, she could clear $350, maybe $375, and then move into somewhere easier to manage. She's not going to want to do that. Marcus's voice was lower, uncertain. She doesn't have to want to. You need to explain it to her logically. She can't keep this house up forever. It's going to fall apart around her. And then what? And then what happens to us, Marcus said. Not a question, a statement. Silence. What about Patty? He asked. Patty lives in Charlotte. Diane's voice was smooth, settled. She's not here. She's not involved. By the time anything is decided, it'll be done. We just need to get your mother to agree. I turned off the faucet. Patty was looking at me. She had heard it too. Her face was still, the way a face goes when the mind is working very fast. I handed her a dish towel. I kept my voice completely normal. Let's give them a few more minutes out there, I said. Want more tea? I did not say another word about what we had heard. Not that night. But I went to bed that night with my mind moving the way it used to move on a difficult case at the office, slowly, methodically, building something piece by piece. After that Tuesday, things moved at a pace that told me this had been planned for longer than one evening on the porch. Marcus began bringing up the house at every visit. Gently at first, almost casually. You know, Mom, if you ever wanted to think about downsizing. There are some real nice, independent living communities around here. You should let me drive you by one. The maintenance on this place is going to get harder every year. Each time I listened, I nodded, I said things like, I'll think about it, and that's something to consider. I never agreed, I never disagreed, I watched. Diane began including herself in these conversations, stepping in to fill the silences I left with information she had clearly researched. She knew the names of communities. She knew the prices. She knew the square footage of certain units. She knew, very specifically, what a woman my age, alone, with my income, could afford. It occurred to me that she knew exactly what I could afford because she had likely looked into my finances. I do not know how, but a woman who has worked in legal offices for 33 years knows what it looks like when someone has done their homework on you. I went to my own lawyer. Her name is Sandra Cho, and she is 64 years old, and she does not take foolishness from anyone. I sat in her office on a Wednesday morning and I told her everything I had heard and everything I had observed. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Do they know about the trust? She asked. No, I said. Bobby set it up 3 years before he died. He did it quietly. We never talked about it with the children. Sandra nodded slowly. Keep it that way, she said, and don't sell anything. I told her I had no intention of selling anything. I want to update my will, I said, and I want to document everything that is happening. Dates, conversations, anything that feels like PR. Sure. Sandra looked at me across her desk and said, "Eleanor, you would have made an excellent attorney." I took that as the compliment it was meant to be. 3 months later, in January, Marcus came over alone. Diane had sent him. I could tell by the way he came in, carrying something he had not chosen on his own. He was dressed carefully. He sat at my kitchen table with his hands folded, and he said he needed to talk to me about something important. He had a letter with him. He slid it across the table. It was from a real estate company. A letter of interest, they called it, an offer to purchase the property. The number at the bottom made me go very still. $290,000. The house was worth at least $350,000. Sandra had told me that. I knew it myself. And the letter had Diane's handwriting in the margin, notes she had made, figures she had calculated. It had been in her hands before it came to mine. "They approached me," Marcus said. "They said they'd been watching the neighborhood. It's a fair offer, Mom. With that money, you could." "Marcus," I said his name gently, "where did this letter come from?" He told me the name of the company. I wrote it down on the notepad I kept by the phone. I always keep a notepad by the phone. Bobby thought it was a habit. It was a practice. "I'll think about it," I said. That afternoon, I called Sandra. She ran the name of the company in 20 minutes. It was an LLC, 2 months old, 1 registered agent. The address was a mailbox service in Evans, Georgia. She called me back 2 hours later. "Eleanor," she said, "you need to sit down." The registered agent for the LLC was Diane's maiden name. I want to stop here and tell you what was happening, as clearly as I understand it now. Diane had formed a company. She had used that company to make a below-market offer on my home. She intended, I believe this as certainly as I believe anything, to purchase my house for significantly less than its value, and then to resell it for a substantial profit, while Marcus convinced me that the offer was fair and that I was doing the sensible thing for my own future. I do not know how long this had been planned. I do not know whether Marcus understood the full mechanics of it or whether he was, himself, being managed by a woman who was better at managing people than he had ever noticed. I have thought about that question many times. I still do not have a complete answer. What I know is that the pressure was real, the offer was deceptive, and my home was at the center of it. I did not confront anyone. I want you to understand that clearly. I did not call Marcus and tell him what I knew. I did not call Diane. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry, not where anyone could see. I went home. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table I had sat at for 31 years, where my children had done their homework, where Bobby and I had eaten 1,000 ordinary dinners, where we had argued and laughed and been silent in the comfortable way of people who know each other's breathing. I put my hand flat on that table. And I got to work. What people do not understand about being quiet is that it is not passive. It looks passive from the outside. It looks like acceptance or defeat or obliviousness. But on the inside, it is the most active thing in the world. It is watching. It is cataloging. It is building. I started keeping a journal. Not a diary. I have no patience for the personal reflection kind of writing. A legal journal. Dates, times, people present, what was said, what was implied, what was handed to me. I kept it in a blue folder in the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet in my bedroom, the one Bobby had always used for tax documents. No one would think to look there. No one did. I also started paying very close attention to Cooper. My grandson was 7 at the time this was escalating. He is a perceptive child. All children are more perceptive than adults give them credit for, but Cooper especially. He noticed tension in rooms. He noticed when adults were pretending. He would come and sit beside me on the couch and lean against my arm without saying anything, the way dogs do when they know something is wrong. One afternoon, Cooper said to me, "Grandma, why is Daddy sad when he talks about the house?" I looked at him. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "He doesn't like talking about it," Cooper said. "He makes a face, like when you have to do something you don't want to do." I held that child close, and I thought about what he had just told me. Because a 7-year-old had noticed something I had suspected, that Marcus was not fully at peace with what was being asked of him. That was important. I filed it away. In March, Patty called me on a Sunday evening the way she always did. But that evening her voice was different. Tight, controlled. "Mom," she said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." I'm always honest with why. Oh, I said. Marcus called me this week. He said you've been having trouble managing the house. He said he was concerned about your memory. He said he thought it might be time to talk about a power of attorney. I was quiet for a long moment. Is that right? I said. He said Diane had found someone to talk to. An elder care attorney, he said. I closed my eyes. In the kitchen behind me, the refrigerator hummed. A car passed on the street outside. Somewhere in the backyard, a bird was making its first evening call. Patty, I said, I want you to come home. I'm already packed, she said. I'll be there Thursday. Patty arrived Thursday afternoon, and I sat her down and I opened the blue folder. I showed her the journal. I showed her the letter. I told her about Sandra's findings. I told her about the LLC and the registered agent and the mailbox address in Evans. My daughter sat at my kitchen table with her hands in her lap, and she did not speak for a very long time. When she finally did, what she said was, "Mom, how long have you known all of this?" "Long enough," I said. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I thought about that. Because I needed to be sure, I said, and because I needed it to be complete. If I had called you in October when I first heard them talking, it would have been a family argument. Now it is a record. Patty looked at me the way she used to look at me when she was 12, and I had explained something she had not understood before. Like the world had just gotten a little clearer. "What do we do?" she asked. "We don't do anything yet," I said. "Marcus is going to call a family meeting. He mentioned it last week. He's going to try to get me to agree to the power of attorney and the house sale at the same time. We are going to let him." "Mom." "We are going to let him make his case," I said, "and then I am going to make mine." Marcus called the meeting for a Saturday in April. He chose my house, which I thought said something. He wanted to be on the ground where he expected to win. He and Diane arrived at 10 in the morning. Patty was already there. Cooper had been left with Diane's mother, which told me that even Diane expected this to be difficult in ways she did not want a child to witness. We sat in the living room. My living room, with the photographs on the mantel and the quilt on the armchair that Bobby's mother had made, and the light coming through the front window the way it has come through that window for 3 decades. Marcus had papers with him. Diane had a tablet. She had a presentation. I want you to understand that. She had a formal presentation prepared about my own life. Marcus began. He was kind in his way. He said he was worried about me. He said the house was a lot to manage. He said he had spoken to a professional about financial planning for older adults and that they had agreed a sale made sense. He said there was an offer on the table. He used those words, "on the table," as though it had arrived from nowhere, and that it was fair and that he wanted me to consider it seriously. Diane chimed in on cue. She had numbers, projections, a list of independent living communities, each one with a price range and a photograph. She talked about security and community and the peace of mind that came with having professionals nearby. When she finished, she looked at me with the expression of someone who has done everything correctly and is waiting to be thanked for it. I looked at Marcus. He was watching his hands. "Can I ask a question?" I said. "Of course," Diane said. "The offer on the table, do you know who made it?" A small pause. "A real estate investment company," Diane said. "They're reputable." "What's the name of the company?" I asked. She said the name. "And who owns that company?" I asked. Silence. "Marcus," I said, and his name came out of me gently, the way you call to someone who is standing at the edge of something dangerous. "Do you know who owns the company that has made an offer on my home?" He looked up. His face was telling me something. It was telling me he had not known, or that he had not let himself know. There is a difference, and I have not yet decided which it was. Diane's voice shifted. "Alina, this is getting unnecessarily." "Her name is on the registration documents," I said. I set a piece of paper on the coffee table. Sandra had printed it for me, the official filing from the Georgia Secretary of State's office. That is a matter of public record. Diane's face went very still. "I also want you to know," I said, still calmly, still quietly, "that I have spoken with my own attorney about all of this. That I have been documenting every conversation about the house and the power of attorney for the past 6 months. And that my attorney has advised me that what has been attempted here has a name, legally speaking, and it is not a comfortable one. Mom, Marcus's voice was raw. I'm not finished, I said, not unkindly, just precisely. The house is not for sale. It has never been for sale. I have no intention of entering an independent living facility. My memory is perfectly intact. And if anyone makes another attempt to pressure me, through financial offers, through elder care proceedings, through any other mechanism, my attorney is prepared to act. I folded my hands in my lap. Now, I said, does anyone want coffee? Diane left. She walked out of my living room with her tablet and her presentations, and she got into the car and she did not come back inside. Marcus sat in the chair by the window for a long time. He did not speak for a while. Neither did I. Patty had gone to the kitchen. She knew when to give people space. Eventually, Marcus said, Mom, I didn't know it was her company. I believed him. I also knew that not knowing was its own kind of choice. I know you've been struggling financially, I said. I know the business hasn't been easy. I know things have been harder than you let on. I had known this for a while, little signals, things a mother notices. If you had come to me and told me the truth, we could have talked about it. He put his face in his hands. I'm sorry, he said. And I could hear the specific quality of that sorry, not the sorry of someone caught, but the sorry of someone who has seen themselves clearly and does not like what they see. I know you are, I said. We did not hug, we were not there yet, but I put my hand on his shoulder as I passed him on my way to the kitchen, and I let it rest there for a moment, and that was something. Diane and Marcus's marriage did not end that day. That is not how things work in real life, but what was true is that a crack had been there for a long time, and now it was visible. Marcus began, over the following months, to understand things about his marriage that he had been looking away from. He began, slowly and painfully, the process of becoming a man who sees clearly. Patty and I spent a long weekend together after the family meeting. We sat on the back porch in the evenings, in the shade of Bobby's oak trees, and we talked. We talked about things we had not talked about in years, about our father, about what it means to be a family, about the difference between loyalty and complicity. Those were the best conversations I have had in a long time. Cooper came to stay with me for a week that summer. He slept in the back bedroom with the ceiling fan turning slowly, and in the mornings we made pancakes and he told me things 9-year-old boys tell their grandmothers, and I listened to every word. He is going to be okay, that child. Whatever happens around him, he is going to be okay. Sandra called me in June to tell me that the LLC had been dissolved. Diane had filed the paperwork herself. I do not know what that meant exactly, whether it was a gesture of concession or simply prudence. It did not matter much to me either way. The house was still mine. I have spent a lot of time in the months since thinking about what this experience taught me. The first thing it taught me is something I already knew but had perhaps let myself forget, that being quiet is not the same as being weak. I was quiet for a long time while this was happening. I did not raise my voice. I did not make scenes. I did not call anyone out in front of others before I was ready. But I was never passive. I was building. And a building, built carefully and on the right foundation, can stand against a great deal of wind. The second thing it taught me is that grief makes us vulnerable in ways we do not always notice. After Bobby died, I was more alone than I had ever been in my adult life. I think Marcus and Diane saw that. I think, in some corner of themselves, they assumed that being alone meant being diminished, that without my husband, I was less than I had been. People make that assumption about older women. It is one of the most persistent and most incorrect assumptions in the world. I am not less. I have never been less. If anything, I am more myself now than I have ever been, because I am no longer softening my edges for the comfort of others. The third thing, and this is the thing I want you to hold on to, whoever you are, whatever has brought you to this story at this hour of the night, is that you do not have to be loud to be powerful. You do not have to fight to win. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply to know the truth, document the truth, and wait for the moment when the truth needs to be spoken. I was never going to lose my home, not because I was lucky, though I was in some ways, not because things could not have gone differently, they could have, but because I was paying attention. Because 33 years of legal work had taught me the difference between a document and a promise. Because Bobby, who is gone and whom I miss every single day, had made sure everything was in order. And because my father was right, a quiet woman sees everything, I have spent a lot of tea. Emma and the months since thinking about what this experience taught me. The first thing it taught me is something I already knew but had perhaps let myself forget, that being quiet is not the same as being weak. I was quiet for a long time while this was happening. I did not raise my voice. I did not make scenes. I did not call anyone out in front of others before I was ready. But I was never passive. I was building. And a building, built carefully and on the right foundation, can stand against a great deal of wind. The second thing it taught me is that grief makes us vulnerable in ways we do not always notice. After Bobby died, I was more alone than I had ever been in my adult life. I think Marcus and Diane saw that. I think, in some corner of themselves, they assumed that being alone meant being diminished, that without my husband, I was less than I had been. People make that assumption about older women. It is one of the most persistent and most incorrect assumptions in the world. I am not less. I have never been less. If anything, I am more myself now than I have ever been, because I am no longer softening my edges for the comfort of others. The third thing, and this is the thing I want you to hold on to, whoever you are, whatever has brought you to this story at this hour of the night, is that you do not have to be loud to be powerful. You do not have to fight to win. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply to know the truth, document the truth, and wait for the moment when the truth needs to be spoken. I was never going to lose my home, not because I was lucky, though I was in some ways, not because things could not have gone differently, they could have, but because I was paying attention. Because 33 years of legal work had taught me the difference between a document and a promise. Because Bobby, who is gone and whom I miss every single day, had made sure everything was in order. And because my father was right. A quiet woman sees everything. It is May now as I sit here writing this. The oak trees in the backyard have their full summer leaves. The back porch has a new coat of paint. I hired a young man from the neighborhood to do it in March, and it looks the way it should. Bobby would have appreciated the color. It is a particular shade of green that he always liked. My neighbor, a woman named Ruth who has lived next door since 1998, came over last week with a dish of banana pudding. We sat on that green porch and ate it out of bowls and watched the afternoon light move through those trees. We talked about our grandchildren. We talked about the neighborhood. We did not talk about anything difficult at all, and it was one of the finest hours I have had in recent memory. Marcus came for dinner last Sunday. He came alone. He is working through things with himself, with a counselor, with whatever arrangement he and Diane are navigating. I do not ask. I set the table. I cook the food. I let him talk when he wants to talk, and I let the silence be what it needs to be when it needs to be that. He looked at me across the table at one point and said, "Mom, I don't know how you stayed so calm." I thought about it for a moment. I had a lot to protect, I said, and I knew I could. He nodded. He looked out the window at the oak trees. After a while, he said, "Dad would have been proud of you." I had to look down at my plate for a moment. I pressed my hand flat on the table, the way I had done in October, in the earliest days of all of this, when I was deciding who I was going to be through what was coming. "I know he would have," I said. "He knew who I was. I do not know who you are sitting with this story. I do not know what you are going through, or what has been taken from you, or what someone has tried to take. I do not know if you are 67 or 37 or 82. I do not know if you are a woman or a man or something between. I do not know if your family looks like mine or nothing like it. But I believe with everything I have that you are reading this for a reason. I believe that something in this story touched something real in your life. And I want to say this to you as simply and as plainly as I can say anything. You are allowed to be quiet and still be powerful. You are allowed to observe and still be in control. You are allowed to wait for the right moment and still be the one who wins. No one can take from you what you refuse to hand over. And the things that are truly yours, your home, your dignity, your truth, your sense of who you are in this world, those cannot be taken without your participation. Do not participate. Know your documents. Know your rights. Know your worth. Talk to someone who knows the law. Keep records. Trust your instincts. And do not let anyone, not the people who love you imperfectly, not the people who want what you have, not the voices that tell you that being old or being alone or being female makes you less than, do not let anyone make you believe that you cannot handle what is coming. You have been handling things your entire life. This is just one more thing. Bobby used to say on the hard mornings, when the news was bad or the world felt heavier than usual. He would pour his coffee and look out the kitchen window and say, "Eleanor, we are going to be okay." And we always were. I am sitting on my porch now, in the evening, in the green light that comes through the oak trees he planted. The birds are making their last calls of the day. The air smells like grass and summer and Georgia, which is the only way it ever smells. Somewhere down the street, a child is laughing, that particular high clear sound that children make when they are completely, uncomplicated happy. My house is mine. My life is mine. And I am, at last, entirely at peace. If this story moved something in you, if you have your own quiet truth that deserves to be told, I would be honored if you shared this with someone who needs to hear it tonight. Sometimes a story is the only thing that reminds us we are not alone.